Hello and welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Zoe Hawkins, and my friend and co-host Jo Wheatley.
Welcome everyone on the topic of how to coach procrastination. And the reason that we're covering this topic is clients often experience procrastination as they think about or are working towards achieving their goals, and coaches can experience procrastination when they are trying to work out how to support their clients who are experiencing procrastination. And it's a topic that has appeared in our Coaching Crowd group with coaches looking for support on it. So we thought we'd bring it to the podcast and explore around it, and hopefully that will stimulate some ideas for you.
Absolutely. And procrastination, I think, is one of those universal human experiences that we can all experience at some particular time. And so having different approaches, tools, and strategies to be able to tackle procrastination is really important, because what we often encounter around procrastination and coaching is that the default place to go is to support your clients with their actions and creating a plan. So when a client comes to a session and shares that they are procrastinating about a topic, the coaching can often remain at the surface level and focusing more on the what are your options and what are you going to do about it and when are you going to do that, and almost nailing your client to the wall on the when and where they're going to get it done, and then holding that accountability focus to check back in with a client once they've done those actions. Now, that can be really helpful. So let's not dishonor that approach, because sometimes that is exactly what clients need, is they just need somebody in their corner. I remember when I was in the corporate world, if my line manager paid an interest in something that I was doing and when I was going to get it done by, I felt more motivated to get that done because I knew that somebody else was involved in that journey with me and paying attention to that journey. So it felt different as to when I was basically responsible for doing something on my own. So sometimes that accountability partnership is a really important part of helping your clients with procrastination. However, it isn't the only strategy. So we're going to talk around the topic and a few other approaches that you can take. So where would you start with something that you work with, Jo?
Well, I think maybe we start just by talking about, well, what is procrastination, to check that we're all on the same page, and when and how might it occur. And I think what we're talking about is we see procrastination as a symptom. And in our style of coaching, we like to get to the cause. And the reason we like to get to the root cause is because we want to help our clients to be able to learn how to self-coach moving forwards and to be able to break any cycles that they might be in. So when we think about procrastination, I think what comes to mind is often the idea that somebody wants, but for some reason they're not doing it. They may have a plan and they know what they want to do and how to achieve it, but for some reason they're not doing it. They are remaining in the status quo situation, but actually in remaining in status quo, in many ways, they're also actually, moving backwards from where their starting place was. And some people procrastinate because of fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of success, fear of who they will be or how received if they achieve the goal that they put their mind to. They might be concerned about what else will change if I make this change here in my life. Sometimes people procrastinate because they feel flooded by the choices that they've got in terms of actions, and they don't want to make the wrong choice around it. What other reasons can you think of, Zoe?
I think there's probably burnout. Sometimes you're procrastinating from a protection place, in that I simply don't have the capacity or the energy to do anything else. So I'm just going to sit here and be stuck because it's safer for me right now to be stuck. So I think there's a burnout piece. I think there's maybe also a piece around clarity. So if I reflect back on times that I've supported clients with procrastination, it's often because they lack the clarity around what they're going to do. So even as you said, Jo, they might have the plan and they might have the objective, but they don't really know how to get started. And so it can be something around the clarity of how they're going to execute on that particular objective. And I'd also say there may be something around trust So when you don't trust in yourself to be able to figure something out, or you're looking ahead at the size of the goal that you have, and you're in that place of like, well, I don't know how to do it. You sort of forget that, well, if I just take the first step, I have the resources to figure the rest of it out. So I think there's something about the relationship with self and trust that can be coming up when procrastination shows its face.
Yeah, and that might be with a client is seeking reassurance, and they might ask for reassurance from you as the coach. This is what I'm thinking about doing. That, and there's that invitation for you to give them the answer, but would you truly be serving your client in doing that, or how else might you handle that situation? And we can talk about that. So how do we coach clients where, well, I guess one thing to say is the client might not realize that so a client, you might be supporting them in your questions in the session, and you might get a sense that there's a procrastination, there's a barrier there. The client, that might not be in their awareness or what they identify as doing. So in that situation, if you get the sense of that, you can of course use things like asking, what are you noticing right now? You could use your skills of observation and ask permission to share an observation. I sense as we get into the action phase of it, there's a sense of resistance. Is that your experience of that? Share more with me about that. You could ask them, what patterns are you noticing in our conversation? And that then the client might say, yeah, I really enjoy the conversations where we're exploring my thinking and my plans, but I don't know if I'm actually going to go and take the action with it. So they still might not label it as procrastination.
Mm. Yeah, and I know we've talked before about causes, but something that just came up for me then was around this values misalignment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reflecting on working with clients that, as you've described there, are sort of talking about the issue and they're setting some actions, but you just can sense that they aren't fully behind those actions. So what's happening there, and that might be where you might do some work around their values. Even if you haven't had that experience in the conversation, if the client is bringing, oh, I am procrastinating about this task and it's really starting to, frustrate me, looking at their values can help the client to maybe explore, perhaps there's a conflict going on around their values, or perhaps what they're trying to achieve is out of sync with their values. And so that would be one of the starting places you could look when supporting a client with procrastination. And of course, from there, that leads on to, I think you said in the outset, Jo, around who am I going to be? Like, if I do this task and it takes off, who will I be? So as well as values work, you could do some work on identity. If that is something that has surfaced in the midst of your conversation, you can look at, okay, so if you work on this project and you achieve that project, who will you be as you are achieving the project, or when you have achieved the project, and helping the client to step into that version of themselves who has successfully achieved what it is that they are procrastinating about.
And you can support them with cognitive behavioral coaching type approach. So, what is it that you're thinking whilst you're in this phase of procrastination, or, holding back from taking the action, however you want to, the client identifies with that feeling. They'll share that with you. And what are you feeling as a result of thinking that? They'll share that with you. And what are you doing? And for them to say, well, I'm doing nothing, sometimes that creates the shift, because they have to actually, they're witnessed in that. And then they're going to do a check. Is that who I am? Is that how I identify with myself? That unpick it. But then if not, you can move into, so in order to achieve your goal of X, what would be helpful for you to have? And if you thought that, what would you? And at that point, the feeling might shift from fear into excitement, as an example. So if you thought that and you felt that, what would you do? And they might just say, I'm going to do it. And that might be the thing. And then you might want to move into, and how are you going to celebrate having taken that action? So it's quite a light touch. When I say light touch, I mean, the questions are simple. But the good thing is it can help the client moving forwards, because that type of If the client understands what the process is that you've been through together, they can use that for themselves moving forwards when they notice that they're getting stuck when actually they want to be moving forwards.
As you were talking there, something else that came up for me was the Gestalt cycle of awareness. And for any coaches or coaches in training that aren't familiar with that, go and take a look at our YouTube channel. We've got a video walkthrough on the Gestalt cycle of awareness. But ultimately, that's about helping your client to identify where are they getting stuck. So is it in the becoming aware of the fact that they're procrastinating in the first place and the emotions that might be present? So we talked about fear being one of those emotions. Is it in the mobilization, in the kind of gathering of the resources and getting ready to get started? Are they perhaps getting stuck there? Or is it in the taking of the action? Is there something about the action that isn't aligned or right for them? So just helping the client to work out, yes, you're procrastinating about this task, but which bits in particular? Where is the procrastination actually showing up for them? And how might they want then to be able to put the strategies in place for dealing with that part? And the piece that comes to mind for me here is it's like the sensory side of things. Like sometimes you might be procrastinating because you're bored. You've been in the same room for 8 hours. You've got this long task list. You haven't stimulated your senses enough to get yourself mobilized to do the next task. So that might be approaching procrastination from more of a self-care angle, like, right, I'm going to, go, what would help your client? And they get to decide. But some things your client might come up with would be like going for a walk, to get some fresh air and get some exercise, and then coming back and tackling the task. Perhaps their strategy for trying to get the things done that they want to get done isn't working for them and doesn't support what they need at that time. So you could look at it from a kind of sensory perspective as well.
Yeah, in some ways, I think the procrastination is like the what somebody is doing, and then there's the why are they doing that, and how are they doing that? What is the strategy, and what is the outcome that they're achieving as a result of that? I want to spin it a little bit now and consider what we touched upon at the start of this conversation, which is a coach might come to supervision and be bringing a dynamic with a client where they don't recognize as a coach that they procrastinate in, adjusting their approach with the client, but actually maybe what they're doing is holding back from sharing something, flexing their approach, which might be really helpful for the client, and they might sense that a shift is needed, but they're holding back. And so I'd encourage those of you that are listening to think about when and how does procrastination show up in my coaching sessions, and is there a pattern there? And what about those situations where clients might not be procrastinating, but sometimes clients take a while to step into action, and there could be a whole load of reasons for that. But if the element or feeling of procrastination, does that ever leak into you? And you're approaching those sessions, and how could you use that information? So that's what we would call using your whole self. So if you that, or a feeling of that yourself, and you're checking in, is this something that I normally feel in coaching sessions, or is this distinct to this particular coaching session? And then how might you bring that dynamic to your client's awareness, and to be able to work with it in your relationship with the client, which then helps them deal with the procrastination or overcome the procrastination in the situation that's occurring outside of the coaching conversation.
Yeah. So I guess one of the ways, if you look at back to what we're talking about here, how do you support your client with procrastination, is to be in supervision and be able to talk through the dynamics in a safe space. Yeah, absolutely. And I think ultimately what we're saying around procrastination is take the time to work through with your client what they believe the real challenge is. What is the gap? So if their goal is to get the thing done, what is the thing that is in the way? Because yes, it looks like it's procrastination, but procrastination is just like the smoke screen. That's not the thing that is in the way. You're looking for the root cause. What is causing the procrastination in the first place? And that's the piece that you would do some coaching around. So that might be belief work, either beliefs about the task in hand or beliefs about self. We talked about failure, like fear of failure or fear of success. You might need to support the client with doing that. And I think the other piece that comes to mind is it procrastination about the task, or is procrastination actually a theme, like in your client's life, career, awareness? Because if it's a theme, that could be something totally different. So if they're procrastinating about everything, then what is that about? Because procrastinating about one task is different from procrastinating about everything that comes up in life. And that can lead you into lots of different places. So ultimately, your conversations need to be client-led. So this isn't about you suggesting the reasons why they might be procrastinating. It's about supporting your client in building their awareness through the power of your questioning.
Yeah, and it could be that the client is focused so much on a particular thing to do they're procrastinating on, that what they don't have is how does this fit into the bigger picture? Because while somebody might not be motivated to make a phone call because for a whole load of reasons, if they actually could link it to a goal that they really were super motivated to, then all of a sudden making that phone call might be something that they stop procrastinating on and actually take the action around it. So it's worth exploring about, zooming in and zooming out to be able to see the relationship to it. And the other thing I would encourage you to do is sit in the procrastination with your client, because it's so easy as a coach when the client says, oh, I just want to get on and do X and I just keep procrastinating about it. I just want to do that. And easy to get caught up in their frustrated energy, and also for it to provoke that, right, we need to solve this quick. Right. So have you got a plan? Oh, no, not really. Okay, well, let's create. And that's what you about at the beginning of the conversation, Zoe. And there is a time and a place for that if it's something that the client wants to work on. But we would encourage you as a coach to kind of just do a 360, check around all of the different things that we have talked about in this conversation. And it's almost in a way the antithesis of procrastination is almost the thing itself, is taking the time, having the patience to explore it and to not collude into the fear of procrastination, but actually to engage with it as a clue, as a piece of information, something to get curious and fascinated by.
Yeah. And asking the procrastination, what are you here for? What is it that you need? What can I learn from you?
Who are you friends with?
Yeah. So some fascinating stuff that you can do. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please do rate and subscribe to the podcast if that's possible from where you're listening from, and please leave us a review. I think you can do that on Apple, possibly even Spotify now. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with another episode.